Alright, how's it going tonight, everyone? Welcome. Tonight is our second State of the Bird in a row. Woo! This is going to be a kind of short talk tonight. We're just going to go over this, and then we're kind of going to just end from there. I got a bunch of stuff I got to do, and I don't have OBS set up right to like switch between, so I don't want to drop the stream and come back. Anyway, so this VOD will be edited and posted on YouTube probably tonight. That's one of the things I have to do tonight. But yeah, so, yeah, let's get started. So, State of the Bird, what is it? It's a presentation to explain what's going on in the project. And by the project, I mean Pidgin and everything, right? So that means Pidgin, libpurple, Finch, libgnt, our infrastructure, maybe some instant messaging freedom stuff, all that kind of stuff. And it's an interactive presentation for the community. And it's interactive because if you notice at the bottom of the video here, it says you can type !ask to ask a question. And I will be answering those questions when we're done with the main presentation. So let's talk about what's happened since the last State of the Bird. The last State of the Bird was on April 1st, 2021. And our next one will be tentatively scheduled for October 7th. That's the first Thursday in October. That's just our placeholder for now. We'll see what happens. The placeholder for this one was July 1st, but that just ended up not happening, so we pushed it out to the 8th. So, you know, just give you an idea of when it's coming, that kind of stuff. All right, anyways, so infrastructure. We applied to renew our DigitalOcean credits for open source projects, and we're waiting a response. So for as many of you know, we run a Kubernetes cluster that runs all of our infrastructure, and that is sponsored by DigitalOcean's open source credits. And yeah, so we're due for renewal, so we're just waiting for a response from that. But everything's there. It's going good. Our email is still running at Wiktel. Thanks, Richard. I've been trying to get this done in between things, but I just haven't gotten it done yet. It's supposed to be moved to DigitalOcean as well. It's just there's been a ton of stuff going on, so I haven't gotten it finished yet. We have also migrated Track to the Kubernetes cluster. So Track was running on a dedicated server at Steadfast Networks, which they had sponsored us for years there. So thank you very much, Steadfast, for that. If you didn't notice, or if you didn't see it, there was a blog post thanking them again for the many, many years of that server. But yeah, so we moved Track in, or we containerized Track. We got that all running. We got that moved to Kubernetes a little bit ago. But after that, then we, told Steadfast, and they tore down the node, and everything's good to go. Aside from that, we've migrated all the Kubernetes manifest from just being straight static YAML to using Kustomize. Kustomize is like a very bare bones templating thing for Kubernetes. The thing that's really nice about it that makes my life easier is you can generate secrets and config maps out of files. So here on the stream, a couple times you may have seen me building these by hand. I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to do the whole base 64 thing anymore for the secrets. None of that, just customizes all of it. So that's really cool. And it gets, it's one less thing off my plate, makes things a little bit more streamlined. So it's good to go. So, all right, next up, let's talk about hosting. So we were using packagecloud.io with one of their open source plans. However, they have decided to change their requirements. It's nothing major. It's stuff like they want like additional SEO from like projects tweeting about them, blogging about them, that kind of stuff. But the issue with that is we never actually achieved what we were going for with Package Cloud. So like, since we never got to that, and we'll explain that in a second, but since we never reached where we were trying to get, and they want to add additional work to us, at this point it just made sense to just drop it, just let it lapse, right? I'm already short on resources as it is, so trying to add additional stuff while trying to actually use it for what we're finished doing, what we were trying to do with it, there's no time to do it, is what it comes down to. What we're trying to do with it was Package Cloud, if you don't know. They host repositories for like RPM, apt, Docker, and a whole bunch of other different packaging formats and stuff. And the idea was that during part of our CI/CD, we would create packages of talk2, gplugin, libgnt, and Pidgin, and on every commit, they would then be available in the repository if somebody wanted them. And think of it as like PPAs, but we're managing all of it on Package Cloud. The thing is just we never got fully there. I got pretty far with the G plugin stuff, and that was working well for a while. Then something broke, and I just never got back to it. So at this point, it's just all right. Well, we haven't worked on it in a while, and they want us to do additional work for something that doesn't work, or their product works fine. What we were trying to do with it wasn't finished. So it's just at this point, it makes sense to just kind of step away from it and go from there. So. All right. Aside from that, we mentioned last time that we were accepted to the summer code. We accepted 2 students, James Culver and Pratik Pradeshi. James Culver is working on modernizing our logging with a new history API that will be backed by SQLite by default. The new history API is going to let us do some stuff we really should be doing in 2021. Stuff like being able to search all of the logs at once, stuff like being able to search across users, and then more important stuff like being able to offload the messages that are, or only keep a certain amount of messages in the conversation window at a time. So like right now, as long as the conversation window is open, every message that's displayed in there is in memory. With the history API, we'll be able to cycle that out and just show 200 messages plus or minus where you are, right? And we'll be able to do all sorts of fun stuff with that. So that project's coming together well. It's looking good. So Pratik is working on an account assistant to help users create accounts. For many of the longtime users, you see the account manager, you know what to do, you understand it, right? What we're trying to target with this project is a new user gets intimidated because a new user is like, I just want to talk to people, right? and then we ask them to select a protocol, and they're like, I don't know what that means, right? And then, maybe they figure it out, maybe they come ask support, maybe they just leave, right? So the idea of the account assistant is to walk them through that process by presenting to them what each different chat network / protocol is, and then walking them through the steps of it, rather than just here's a bunch of fields, good luck. So that's the idea. But both projects are progressing, and midterm evals are next week. So that's where we are with the summer code. All right. So Pidgin 2. We released 2.14.2 on April 1st. That was our last State of the Bird. We followed that up with a release a week later by releasing 2.14.3. And then we followed that up a little bit more than 3 weeks later with 2.14.4. And on June 3rd, we released 2.14.5. So lots of releases happening on the Pidgin 2 branch, but it happens. But more importantly, we're releasing 2.14.6 today. This is one of the things I have to do after this session. Things took a little bit longer than I hoped to. And apparently I haven't done a Windows build in a while. Something got wonky there. But so the notable changes in 2.14.6, we fixed a bug where XMPP session management was started too early, which was causing namespace errors and was effectively kicking people off of services. We added support for the no proxy environment variable. That environment variable, so inside Pidgin, you can set a proxy to say all connections need to go through my HTTP proxy, right? What the no proxy environment variable does is it lets you specify hosts and ports and stuff like that. There's a whole spec behind it that the program will not use the proxy for. So when you're connecting to Freenode, or I think the better example is say you're using Pidgin in a corporate environment and you have an HTTP proxy for all external stuff or something, but internally you don't want to run through that proxy. So that's a good example of where you would use it, that kind of stuff. Aside from that, we added a donate link to the help menu. That now links to the donate page on iamfreedom.org. Doesn't hurt to have it there, and if people are like, oh, I didn't know how to donate, well, now there's a thing in the menu, right? We also had support for code fuzzing. Code fuzzing is a technique where you have a program sit there and call functions in your program with random inputs, and you see what happens. So the support that we added is we've now added a bunch of code fuzzers into the code base. and we've also, we're not done integrating it with Google open source software fuzzing yet. That's a project Google, excuse me, that's a project Google runs where they will continuously do that. And they keep track of the storage and all that kind of stuff. So we do have stuff set up on the Google side, but this is stuff that's inside of our project so that we can do the testing on our own and that kind of stuff too. But yeah, so that's all still developing. We're still getting there with that. As well with that, we've fixed a few issues found by fuzzing functions. Not all of them are in 2.14.6. Only one of them is right now. I was hoping to get more done, but time. So yeah, anyways, there's a few more things, but these are the highlights of what's going to be in the release. So, next up, Pidgin 3. So one of the things we were trying to do with Pidgin 3, we're working on with Pidgin 3 since the last State of the Bird was making sure we could build Windows and Mac OS native installers. Unfortunately, we have not yet completed this. It turns out it is really, really complicated. We tried doing this with JH build to try to make it doable and make everything work. That turned out to not be doable. And then we started looking at using Mason sub-projects to do all this. And we're making progress there, but it's not 100%. So we need to come back to that and go from there. And yeah, also I know the part of this got overlapped. Sorry. I'll have a link to the presentation when the video gets on YouTube. Anyways, aside from that, we've been continuing to adopt gplugin by removing the libpurple plugin layer that was built on top. So originally when gplugin was integrated with libpurple 3, there was the idea of still like being able to disable plugins and do static plugins and stuff like that. All of that's just being moved into gplugin now. So there's stuff like I can't remember exactly. The Purple Plugins API is getting removed, and that's just calling gplugin manager directly and stuff like that. I think there's still a few more things sitting around we need to take care of, but that the vast majority of it is gone and it just talks to gplugin directly. As I mentioned, the static plugins, we don't have those completed yet in gplugin, but we know how to do it. We just need to actually go and do it, but there's no real like pressing reason to do it right now. But that was one of the justifications for dropping all the purple compatibility layer for gplugin was that, okay, we need to at some point be able to support static plugins. And so we had to come up with a plan for it. In case anybody is wondering what I mean by static plugins, so a static plugin a plugin is typically a shared library that gets loaded dynamically at runtime, right? A static plugin is a plugin that is compiled into the Pidgin binary or Finch binary even, right? What it means is like the plugin is just always available and can't be removed. It's just part of the program at that point. So like I said, it took a little bit of finagling to figure out how to make it work with gplugin, and we've got a really solid concept for it, but we haven't finished it yet. All right. Anyways, we're continuing to modularize the conversation window. That work is, as you all know, going ridiculously slowly. Most recently, I've started working on separating or removing the GTK notebook, which is what gives you the tab interface for all the conversations, and replacing that with a list or a tree view so that you can actually select, like have a tree and a hierarchy and all that stuff. That's still really far out there, but in the meantime, we have now taken the info pane. That's the info above the chat, where it says like the username shows your status icon, buddy icon, or if it's a chat itself, it shows a topic, blah, 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 blah. That is now its own standalone widget. Previously, that was just kind of intermingled with all of everything in GTK Conf, and now it's its own thing. So that's good. That's helpful. Yeah. All right. Tooltips have been finally converted to GTK Tooltip. So for a long, long time, a lot of Pidgin's tooltip, or a lot of Pidgin itself goes back to game before GTK 2, right? So a lot of things had to be written with that stuff in mind, and even when GTK 2 came out, we still supported GTK 2.0 for a very, very long time. One of the artifacts of that is we weren't using the official tooltip support in GTK because it didn't exist until GTK 2.12, which is something like 12 years old or something now at this point. So we finally ported to that. So that stuff's all cleaned up. Things should react and work better now. So that's been done. That's cool. We've also adopted libhandy. Libhandy is a library of GTK widgets. One of the ideas is to try to make applications more reactive. Libhandy was written by Purism for use in Chatty and other applications on the Librem 5, their open source cell phone. So like the idea is like you can build an application that uses libhandy, and it will responsively update to the size of the screen. I don't have any good examples here or anything, but the idea is like, when you're on a desktop, you get like more information of like, let's say you have like a notebook, you get like tabs with more information, blah, blah, blah. When you're on a phone, it shrinks it down, just shows an icon or something, right? That's kind of the idea. And the thing is the library does all of that. So you as the application developer don't have to worry about that. But so far we've converted the credential provider preferences page to use it. And then finally, we actually have our first modern chat feature has landed in libpurple and Pidgin. None of the protocols currently support it yet, but that feature is that if a user is able to, if the protocol allows a user to specify the color of their name in chats, or if the protocol sets it specifically for them. Like in the case of Discord, your role has a color in Discord, so whatever role you are, that's the color of your name. Whereas like on Twitch, for example, you can set your name to whatever color you want. We now have all the support in there for libpurple and Pidgin to actually make that possible. I know it sounds silly, but it was small, low-hanging fruit, so I was like, all right, let's get this one in, let's get this one done and make it work. All right, next up. Let's talk about the setbacks. So, as many of you know, an exploit broker has put a very large bounty on remote code execution exploits against Pidgin 2. The remote code execution exploit means pretty much exactly what it says. What they are looking for are exploits where where by sending a message to somebody that's running Pidgin 2, you're able to run code on their computer. Now, that's obviously super duper dangerous and not something we want our users to deal with. So I have dedicated a lot of time to dealing with this. And by doing so, we've gone on the defensive, right? So this is why we started, so the release on June 3rd, because this was announced on June 1st. So right away, right to action. We went through and we used ScanBuild from the Clang project. It's a static analysis tool for C or for native code, C, C++, Rust, whatever else, right? And what it does is it goes and looks for issues in your code, stuff like use after freeze, out of bounds reads and writes, logic errors, and so on and so forth, right? So we went through and fixed every single issue that ScanBuild found in 2.14.5. I think it was June 1st alone, I had opened 23 review requests that day to fix issues that ScanBuild found. Now, you're probably going, well, why were there so many issues in ScanBuild? Pidgin 2 has been in maintenance mode for a really long time. Like even before I took over the project, right? You could argue that Pidgin 2 was probably in maintenance mode. There was like a release once a year. There wasn't a whole lot of feature development going on, stuff like that. So, like, when I took over and we started working on Pidgin 3, I put ScanBuild on Pidgin 3 pretty early. So Pidgin 3 typically sits around no issues in ScanBuild because we check it often, right? Whereas Pidgin 2, nobody had ever ran ScanBuild on it before. So we went from nothing to making it ScanBuild clean in a matter of 3 days. So aside from that, we started fuzzing functions in libpurple that handle remote input. So stuff like purple markup linkify, where when text comes in, we figure out where to put a link in and stuff like that. As well as just other XML processing, HTML processing, blah, 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 blah. All of that right now is happening under Google's open source fuzz program. And we've got some leads on some of it. Reproducing the crashes and stuff is kind of difficult, and the whole thing's really convoluted, so it takes a lot of time to get it right. But we started fixing some of those issues in 2.14.6. What this means is there will be a 2.14.7 that will have a bunch of security stuff. Unfortunately, I don't have a timeline on that because, so like I mentioned earlier with the fuzzers, like they're not like magically done. What they're doing is they're building strings and like manually adjusting them and stuff like that, and they just keep calling the function again and again and again and again and again, right? So like if you've ever seen, or like if you're like ever if you've ever seen like a brute force password attack where it just starts off at, or like even war dialing, right? It starts off at 0000, then it tries 0001, 0002. That's what the fuzzers are doing. Um, it does it a little bit more random, and it tries to figure out based on code coverage if it's hitting more of the function and stuff like that when it makes changes, and tries to be smart about it. But yeah, so it's going to take time. We just had a new crash show up. I think it was 2 days ago that I haven't even had a chance to look at yet. But it was a slightly modified input string, and it goes from there. And one of the things I should mention too about all the fuzzing. So the fuzzing is calling functions in libpurple directly to make sure that those functions are okay. Now that doesn't mean that just because something crashes in fuzzing that it'll crash as the program is running on your computer. The reason for that is there's a lot of extra steps before that, right? So like, unless you're like masquerading as a server, most of the time all these messages have to go through a server as well, right? Something like that. So just because our function may have a corner case here and there doesn't necessarily mean you're at risk. It doesn't mean you're not at risk, but the likelihood of it is much lower. Like the issue we fixed in 2.14.6 with purple markup linkify, I have not been able to find a way to reproduce it, even with Bonjour. I can't make it happen. I can make it happen by calling the function directly, but like actually using the program and sending a message, I haven't been able to make it crash. And I spent a lot of time trying to do that. So, like I said, it's not that you're not vulnerable. It just means that you're very not likely. Just likewise, like just because I can't find it doesn't mean there isn't a way, right? So, all right, what are our next steps? Next steps. Here's the things we'll be working on between now and the next day of the bird. Again, tentatively scheduled for October, what did I say, 8th? I think 8th, I don't remember. We've got the second half of Google Summer of Code. So project will continue going from there. We'll see what happens. We're going to continue fixing any issues that fuzzing finds. Like I said, we are going to have a 2.14.7. I don't have a timeline on that, but that's the case. We're going to continue to modularize gtkconf.c because before we can add any of these modern features or even make Pidgin 3 usable for most people, we have to get that done. We're going to continue working on the installers for macOS and Windows so that people can try it without actually building. And then we're finally going to get email to its new home on DigitalOcean. So, yeah, that's about it. But on a more personal note, my funding is going to dry up in September. I've continued looking for funding, but so far nothing's panned out. Twitch and Patreon, as I've said before, they do not bring in enough money for me to even pay my rent each month. So for now, the full-time Pidgin development dream is at an end. But whatever employment I find, it's most likely going to severely decrease my available free time, which means development is going to slow down considerably. And what that really also means is streams will no longer be scheduled. And if they do happen, they're going to be random. So it's not something I'm happy about. It's not something I'm looking forward to, but I wanted to give you all a great heads up that, you know, it's been great these past 4.5 years streaming. But one of the things I learned when I started working on Pidgin full-time was that trying to do a job and Pidgin full-time and streaming all at once, it's not a way to live. It's really hard, and that's why, like I said, streams won't be scheduled, and if they happen, they'll be random. We will still be doing the State of the Birds, but that's unfortunately the way it is. So, with that said, does anybody have any questions? I see nobody has asked any questions during the stream, so now's your chance to go ahead and ask any questions you want. Again, to ask any questions, just type ask or exclamation point ask and then a space, then your questions. Doesn't look like anybody has any questions. All right, I'll give you guys a few more minutes and we'll go from here. But yeah, so tonight we will get 2.14.6 finished up and released. I'm just about done. I did a test build on Windows and something went wrong there. It looks to be something wrong with my setup, maybe. Something happened with NSYS, and I don't understand exactly what happened. But once I get that test build done, I'll get it tagged and pushed and released, or whatever, the tarball released, and then get the Windows release out, and we'll go from there. So, yeah. All right, well, if nobody has any questions, I guess we're going to call it here. So, yeah. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for coming by tonight, and until next time. Oh, of course, of course. So, Sprenza asks, besides money, how can we help? Well, I mean, there's a bunch of ways you can help. If you check out the contributing page on Pidgin.im, there's a bunch of options there. There's always helping triage the issue tracker, supporting users in whatever communication method of ours that you happen to use. So, like, we're on Freenode, OFTC, and Libera chat now. Oh, I didn't mention that. We did decide that we're going to have a presence on OFTC as well. Aside from that, we have a subreddit, we have a Discord, we have an XMPP service, we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter page. So basically, our users reach out to us wherever, and we try to respond to them. Even our support mailing list. That's one I always forget to check. Thank you, Ian, for always being on top of that one. But aside from that, if you're willing to do code stuff, check out what's in the issue tracker. Or, if you find something that's broken in the program, send a patch. There's lots of ways. So if you're looking for more specific things, friends, hit me up on Discord or Twitter or something, and we can talk about it a little bit more there. So, all right, next question. Maui asks, I guess it's not a good idea to randomly ask companies to give you money. I guess it's better if you do it yourself. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, if there's a company that you're aware of that has some sort of an open source sponsorship program, just direct them to me, and then I can go and talk to them. Part of the problem that we ran into was I was working with a company or a nonprofit that does open source funding, and I made it past the first round. Then they just ghosted me. Like they asked for some follow-up questions, and then they never, ever responded. So, like, 2 weeks later, I was like, just curious what's going on here. Like, can I apply again? I'm like, obviously, I missed out on this call, blah, blah, blah. Like, but yeah, and then they just never responded. Never at all. So it's just like, I guess this is it. I guess they're not interested in supporting me. So, or supporting the project. So, just is what it is, right? So yeah. I've tried reaching out to some other people that have ties to the project and stuff like that. People that are run their own companies and stuff like that now, and they're not interested. So it's just, it is what it is, unfortunately, right? So we'll see what happens. Maybe something big will happen before October. I don't know. Or before September. We'll see. But, yeah. And by the end of September, I have to have some new form of income because I will have spent all my money in the bank. Is the long and the short of it. So, that's about it. Alright, so we got any more questions here? Alright, trying to think, what else can I mention? Oh, there will be no stream next Thursday. I've got another thing going on, so I won't be here on Thursday. Um, but yeah, so all right. Well, thank you everybody for coming by tonight. And again, I'll get this posted up on YouTube shortly. So if you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can find the link to it over here on the social page. But yeah. So all right. Thank you everybody for coming by, and until next time, adios.